Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Office of Financial Education's Adultish series, Making a Financial Plan. We are so glad that you are here today. I know that this is a recorded webinar, so feel free to hit stop, pause, fast forward, rewind, however many times you need to get all the information that you need. We are here to help you get that financial plan going. So, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So, hi there. My name is Mary Virginia Ireland. I am a student success specialist in the Office of Student Success, but my role also includes financial education, working with students, whether that's making a financial budget or a plan like today, talking through scholarship resources, whatever it is in terms of money management. I'm here to kind of help you through that journey and walk alongside you. So, I'm really looking forward to today. All right. So, what's the point of today? Why are you here? I encourage you to ask that for yourself because obviously you're here for some reason. Maybe it's to learn how to make a budget, maybe to see if it's you can pick up some new tips and tricks. Tips and tricks you've never had before, and you just want to kind of become more fiscally aware and savvy. So, I hope take a moment to reflect on that and why you came. But regardless, why is it important to have a budget? I think a lot of times when we think about a budget, it can kind of be in negative terms in terms of, I'm only going to do this and that, and I can never spend money on this, and I can, very rigid and, that kind of thing. And yes, you do want to stick to your goals. You want to stick with your plan as best you can, but budgeting should be used as a tool to help you meet your goals. It should be used as a way to kind of live life a little bit less stressful than if you didn't have a budget plan. I know finances can be very overwhelming to talk about, and that's okay. But I hope today is a good stepping stone for you. So, what are the goals or what are the intentions for today's presentation? We want you to learn how to evaluate your finances and take the steps to improve them. Learn what a budget is and why it's important. Create an action plan for your goals and create a budget for yourself. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk about a couple of resources that you can use online and also via the Office of Financial Education. All right. So today is just one part of many webinars and events within our adultish series. But essentially, the point of this program is to help provide tools and support for you to help you navigate your choices and make informed fiscal decisions. So, obviously, today is on making a financial plan. We've also done in the past credit scores, reports, student loan repayments, all of those really fun, exciting things that we know you just cannot wait to talk about. So you can always check out on our website here, if you can see it at the bottom of the screen, nyu.edu/financial-ed. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you'll see all the upcoming events there. We do refresh them after every semester, so you can take a look and see all the events. We are still doing events in the midst of COVID, just virtually, and hopefully we can get back to in-person events and kind of see you face to face, because that's why we're here. We're here to support you and to serve you. So, without further ado, let's get started on making a financial plan. Okay, all right. So, what does it mean to make a financial plan, and what are the influences of your financial situation? So there are 5 factors that I kind of want to touch on that influence your financial situation that you may not, be consciously aware of, right? So the first one is your financial situation. So you want to make sure that you have financial systems set up to organize your money and classify your budget. So kind of the bare bones of what we want you to have is a checking account, a savings account, and then a little bit later on down the road, maybe an retirement account so you can retire at that beautiful house in South Florida that you've always wanted, right? And helping you manage your money effectively. The second one is based on financial behavior. So research shows that most young adults, teens, have never really had formal money management training, whether that's at home or in school. And if you have been exposed to some sort of money instruction, it's usually not like high quality, like it's not in depth, it's not over time. It's kind of like all right, we're going to do a little bit of this and move on to the next thing. Doesn't mean that's not your situation. Maybe you had a great financial background. Maybe that's why you're here today, to just push yourself and learn even more. Or maybe you've never had any sort of financial discussion before and that's why you're here. So, wherever you're coming from, it is a okay. Again, I'm just reiterating what research has shown. The third one is financial sentiment. So, this is what emotions and attitudes and beliefs you have about your finances and what drives your money habits. We actually do have another webinar on financial sentiment. So, definitely check that out. But I think that that can kind of serve as an indicator of how you manage your funds and how you can maybe kind of predict how your spending and budgeting patterns will progress as you get older. That fourth one there is financial education. So, whether you realize it or not, every single day you are exposed to some sort of advertising or other manipulators. Maybe you hopped on Instagram and there's the newest, subscription service for Ipsy or BoxyCharm or whatever, and you've just got to have it or you got to get Chewy for your dog. Whether you realize it or not, you're being manipulated through social media, social environments. So you have a lot of pressures, maybe not just from social media, but from parents, social circles, families, all of these pressures kind of coming in, whether you realize it or not. And those marketing messages or messages from our community really have a powerful influence on us and how we kind of mold our financial behaviors. And last but not least is financial systems. This kind of emphasizes where you came from. So maybe you grew up in a very, very well off family. Money was never really an issue. Or maybe you grew up where money was talked about. Maybe it was something that was, on the table every month to kind of discuss, your economic status. And I think that can also kind of affect how you see your financial situation yourself and how it can, affect you moving down the line. Again, this is what research shows. I am not pinpointing one person or one group of people, but those are just some things to kind of be aware of in the back of your head as you assess your financial situation and how we begin to help you make a financial plan. All right. So, what is creating a financial plan important? We've talked about some of those pillars that kind of influence it, right? But what exactly is it? Um, so, basically, a financial plan ensures that you always know where your money is supposed to go. So, I always like to say, give every dollar a job, no matter how small the job is. So, maybe it's putting $1 a day into savings and you've got 30, 31, maybe a little less if it's a leap year, and giving every dollar a job and helps you make a plan to set goals for yourself and achieve the things that you want to achieve. It also allows you to have money for things that you need and that are important to you. Everybody's going to have some sort of basic living expenses, whether that's rent or a mortgage, food, utilities. These days, cell phones are a need to a degree. And the things that are important to you, that can vary from person to person. I know for me, family time is very important. Obviously, COVID has affected that quite a bit, but that can also influence how I manage my money and that sort of thing. Um, Following a spending plan will also help you if you're in debt or trying to get out of debt. So that you can make a snowballing debt plan, or just being financially savvy can prevent you from going into a tailspin of debt. And lastly, it can help you feel empowered when you're dealing with money. I know that talking about money, especially your personal situation, can sometimes feel discouraging or embarrassing, or maybe it doesn't, and that's okay too. But we want you to feel comfortable when it comes to managing your finances, and we want you to feel empowered by that and really take the reins on that as you move forward. Okay. So, benefits of living with a financial plan. Why should you have one, right? So, you got to have money for expenses. Living ain't free, living ain't cheap. I wish it was, especially in parts of New York, it can be very expensive. So we want you to have money available for your expenses, and establish a record of paying bills. That's obviously very important. It can also lower your stress over your finances if you have a plan. If you have something written down on pencil and paper, at least that's my go-to. I know that's a little bit old school, but it can lower your stress if you have a plan in place. It helps you if you're be prepared in case of emergencies. Obviously, COVID came out of nowhere for a lot of us, and hurt some people financially. But I think that's important. Whether you're saving for emergency, whether it's repairs, health bills, whatever it is, moving, all of those things. And then lastly, it allows you to better focus on your academics. So you're a student first, right? But you also got to ensure that you're eating, you're safe, your well-being is being nourished, whether that's emotionally, mentally, whatever that might look like for you. So kind of having a financial plan can alleviate some of the stress so that you can ensure that you're passing that mechanical engineering exam, right? All right. So we're going to go a little bit in depth. We're going to start with kind of an umbrella overview of the 7 steps to build a financial plan. And then I'm going to go a little bit more in depth so you can kind of personalize it and hone it for yourself. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview first, and then we can get into the nitty gritty and make it personalized for you. So the first step is setting goals. So this may not be as complicated as you may think it would be. So a short-term goal might be to pay off your credit card debt. A medium-term goal might be to take a cruise or save for a down payment on a home. Or a long-term goal might be plans for retirement, paying off your home, leaving assets behind for your loved ones and family members. So those are all goals that you set, and your goals are yours and yours alone. Yours may not look like the person that sits next to you in class. It may not be your roommates, and that's okay, because you're deciding what's important to you, and those non-negotiables that kind of make up your financial plan. So the next one is identifying income and expenses. So we want you to look at where your money is coming in and what you're spending it on. So think about all of your sources of income. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's student aid, student loans, and allowance, work study. All of those things are income, right? So make a list of all of your income sources and the actual amounts, and write all of those down. Then record your spending on the other side of a sheet, right? So this could be every single thing. It can be groceries, it can be your Netflix subscription, it can be rent, it can be gas for your car or a subway ticket. This can be difficult for some people because they're clear about where their money comes from, but they're not always clear where their money goes. Kind of like, when you have those moments where maybe you get a paycheck, you pay off some bills, and a couple of weeks later you open your checking account and you're like, wait, I'm confused. I've had that happen before too. Like, where did it all go? So we want you to kind of think about weekly or monthly expenses, annual expenses, and things that need to be accounted for in your budget, and kind of think about how you can create a budget that identifies those, and doesn't create debt along the way. So what I mean by that is, if your income is $1,000 a month and your bills are $1,200, you're already in a $200 deficit. So where can we kind of trim the fat there, and kind of help you reach those goals, but also be financially stable? The next one, separating needs and wants. So as people track their spending, they discover that some of their money gets used for things that they don't really need. And instead, they merely want them and buy them impulsively. I know I'm guilty. I love fashion. I love buying the newest pair of boots or the newest, pants or belt or whatever. And I don't always need it, right? Obviously we need clothes, but maybe not to the extent that we may all want. And so that's something to kind of think about. Doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means that you need a budget for it and be aware again of where your spending is going. That's the key of good money management, is separating your needs from your wants. And again, your needs and wants may be different from everybody, but a lot of people are going to kind of have the same kind of skeletal part of, shelter, food, cell phone, that sort of thing. So an example of this is, let's say you need a car to get to work, right? If you've looked at all of your transportation options and a car is the way to get to work, sure, a car might be a need, but do you need the 2020 model that's 6 figures, 5 figures, whatever, 6 figures, whew, 5 figures, a $500 a month car payment? Can you afford that? Or could you get something that's a little bit less expensive, less gas mileage, less monthly car payment, and allocate those funds to other things that you might need or things that you may be saving for your wants? So kind of think about that. Okay. Now we're going to hit 4 through 7. All right. So designing your plan. Before you can go any further, you need to ensure that your expenses are not more than your income. That's what I talked about on the previous slide is if you're making $1,000 a month and your expenses are 1,200, you're already $200 under where you need to be. And again, where can you kind of trim some of that up? So, expenses include everything that you spend your money on, not just bills. That might be going to eat out. That might be going to the movies. Obviously, not now, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. So think back about your budget. If you've got your income on one side and your expenses on one side, they've got to it's either you've got to have something left over or you're right on the mark. We don't want to go under that. You don't want to live above your means if you've heard that before. So if you do have a surplus, let's say that you do have a couple, it might be a couple dollars, it may be a couple $100, who knows? Where are you allocating that money? Are you investing it? Are you putting it into a savings account? Are you putting it into an emergency fund? Are you putting it in retirement? Lots of different options, but again, giving every dollar a job to make sure that you're using your money wisely. All right, step 5, putting your plan into action. So you've set your goals, you've established how much you need to set aside for seasonal expenses. Maybe that's, vacation for the summer or holiday gifts and other expenses. Now it's time to put that plan into action. So look for small ways to cut your costs. Um, Obviously, there are things that are going to be the same every month. Maybe a credit card payment, maybe a student loan payment, but there are some things that are kind of flexible. Eating out, utility bills, even sometimes can be vary from month to month, especially when the seasons change. All of those sorts of things. Um, so you kind of need to consider that as you're putting your plan into action. So one thing that I try to do is I absolutely love hot tea. You can ask any of my coworkers. Does that mean I need to go out and get hot tea every day, or does that mean I go and get hot tea on a Friday at my favorite cafe, but I make the other cups of tea, again when we were back in the office, and saving that money and putting it towards a goal of mine that I have. So those small incremental changes can make a huge difference day to day and month to month. All right, step number 6 is looking ahead. So any good plan has to have monitoring, periodic review, and an occasional reevaluation. A spending plan is no different. Circumstances may change. COVID 2020 was obviously a huge example of how things changed. Maybe you need to reevaluate your plan. And things also vary at times in your life. So when you first make your spending plan, you need to spend some time monitoring it to ensure that it is accurate or realistic information. So it will take about a month to start falling into place. So let's say on January 1, you make your financial plan. You may not have a grasp on it until February 1st, or even March 1st. And again, this is an example. Maybe you make the plan in January, you do it in February, and you kind of look at how that pattern of spending and expenses goes over time. By the third month, that March time period, if we're starting at the beginning of the year, new financial plan, you want to ask yourself a couple of questions once you're in that third month. What did I do well? What areas can I improve upon? Is there any other place that I can give each dollar again another job? Now, let's say that you get to your third month and it just did not work. It was, you made your plan, but you didn't stick to it, or something changed. A couple things you want to ask yourself: did you calculate your income correctly? A lot of times you might get a salary, but what you actually get when you get that direct deposit or that check might be less, because remember, you got to think about taxes coming out of that check. Are your expense figures accurate? Maybe you have Spotify for $10 a month, but it went up to $15 a month due to a policy change or something like that. Think about that. Are they accurate? And is your plan based on actual numbers or what you hope you can earn and spend? So obviously we all have aspirational salaries. We all have aspirational money goals you want to make, right? But it's got to be realistic. Otherwise you're not doing yourself a favor and the plan's pointless, right? And then lastly, did you give it a fair chance? Managing money can be challenging at first. Once you get into the hang of it, budgeting can be, kind of fun. You can make it fun. So that's something to kind of think about is did you give it a fair chance as well? All right. And the last one is managing seasonal expenses. So obviously, these are things that show up in your budget but do not occur monthly. Maybe that's buying gifts for your friends and family for the holidays. Maybe it's your 1 year anniversary with your loved one and you want to buy them a gift. All of these things that occur but are not monthly. How can you kind of figure out when you need to start budgeting for those items? And if you're under budget, again, how can you use that money and have like a little nice chunk of money later on if you didn't use everything that you had planned for? Okay. So those are the 7 steps to building a financial plan. I know that was a lot. So breathe with me here. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make it specific to you. So we're actually going to go back through each of these 7 steps, but hone it to you. So get out pencil, paper, iPad, whatever it is you use to take notes. Or, I personally use Excel sheets when it comes to budgeting. So whatever works for you. And we're going to hop right in here. Okay, so the first one is setting goals. We talked about this earlier, right? That setting goals is one of the most important steps in your financial plan. So, first and foremost, you need to define your goals. What is important to you? What is practical for you? And what is behind your financial decisions, right? So, um, think about short term, long term, middle of the road term kind of thing. I have a chart here on the screen that you can see. These are just some, examples, paying rent, paying off a student loan, buying a new iPhone, getting a nice pair of fuzzy boots, all things that you might have goals for yourself, but how do they calculate into, time? So think about those. Is it 3 months, 6 months, a year? All of this can kind of change. All right, the second one is identifying your income and expenses. So think about your income expenses. So this is where having an Excel sheet or a pen and paper or iPad can be really helpful. I have an example of a budget worksheet here. You can find tons online, and I'm actually going to give you a resource at the very end that kind of hones in on this for you, and gives you some examples or kind of like a shell of how you can use one. But evaluate your income and your expenses. So at the top, you can see maybe it's family support, a job, scholarships, work study, and then all of your expenses. These are just some of them. They don't include every expense. You might not have some of these expenses. So again, just kind of thinking about that. And our goal is to be under budget and have a surplus, or be right on the line there. We never want to live above our means. Again, we kind of want to do the best we can and try to budget accurately here. All right, so the third one, we talked about this earlier, separating your needs from your wants. I know this is so hard because life is all about choices, right? Whether we realize it or not. So without a clear sense of needs and wants, it's easier to fall into money mistakes or mishandling your money, right? So again, I put all of the goals here on the screen, short term or long term, and written down whether they're a need or a want. So yes, I would say, having a phone is important, but do I need the one with the highest gigabytes with the, the best camera and all of the, the gadgets and all that kind of stuff? So again, kind of evaluating that, and each person's needs and wants are going to look a little bit different. And then look at your chart. What have you written down? What are your goals, and what's the time frame for accomplishing those goals? Are some of those expenses really wants, or some of those actual expenses? So if you need a phone, that's an expense, but is the type of phone a need or a want, right? So things to think about. Okay, so designing your plan. Okay, so there's kind of 3 areas that this kind of falls into when you're designing a plan. So you want it to be measurable, actionable, and realistic. So measurable is so easy to think about when you're talking about money because it's numbers, right? You can see how much you plan to save, and did you meet your goal of how much you wanted to save? Were you over? Were you under? That's important. But I think a lot of times people forget the element of time. So let's say you want to save $1,000. In what time frame? Do you want to have $1,000 saved in 6 months? Do you want to have $1,000 saved in a year? You kind of want to figure that out as you're designing a plan that works for you. The second one is actionable. So this is where a lot of budgeting plans fall short. You may write your expenses down. You may calculate how much your disposable income you have, and then that allows you to kind of determine when you can afford X. So if you're making $3,000 a month, but your a down payment for a home that you're looking at is $20,000. Is where can you allocate that money to save and budget? And sometimes this is where it can kind of fall into a wish list rather than a budgeting plan, right? Always good to have wishes, always good to have goals and set those things for yourself. But actionable means having specific tactics or actions in mind in order to reach your goal. I'm going to say that one more time because it's so important. Actionable means having specific tactics or actions in mind to further your goals and your financial efforts. Okay, so kind of let that sink in. I think that kind of speaks for itself. And then the last one is realistic. So, also important to recognize because let's face it, we're not always the most realistic when it comes to our spending aspirations, right? We all have our goals. I know social media makes it even harder because you feel like you've got to, you know, spend money a certain way or have certain things to be accepted and, part of the crowd and that sort of things. But, um, you've got to be realistic about this at the same time. I would love to have a house in Cabo. I would love to have a house in Cabo. Maybe that's not financially feasible for me right now. Maybe that's a long-term goal I want to have. But again, you want to be realistic with the goals that you have for yourself. Most budgets or most financial plans are for the long term. And when you make a plan, you have to give yourself a reasonable amount of time to see it through, right? So that's where that action piece of time and tactic is really, really key here. All right, so you've got your budgeting worksheet. That was on the other screen. Again, I'm going to show you those resources at the end of this presentation so you can access those. Now it's time to put that plan into action, right? A plan's not going to do anything if it's sitting on your iPhone, your desk, pad of paper, if you're not using it, right? So, a couple things you want to keep in mind here. Be accountable. Manage your cash flow and expenses daily. Maybe that means checking your banking statement daily, kind of seeing what you've spent. Being reasonable. Maybe if you go out to eat with friends, maybe you don't order, an appetizer, a salad, soup, entree, dessert. Although that sounds wonderful because I do love food, but being responsible, still having fun, but kind of evaluating your daily expenses. And then again, focusing on your priorities. You got to evaluate everything. And again, is it a need or a want? And I think when you kind of look at things that way, it can kind of help you determine where you want to put your money and kind of identify the things that are important to you. Be creative with your budget and plan differently. We want you to have fun. I don't want you to sit inside. Well, again, during the time of COVID, I know it's a little bit different, but we want you to have fun too, because you can budget and you can be, dedicated to your expenses and your budget and have a tight hand on the coin purse, but you got to have fun too, right? That's what makes life so enjoyable. But again, also planning for emergencies. I think 2020 has shown us that, but I think it's also important to save for other emergencies such as medical mishaps. Things happen, natural disasters happen, things you don't plan on, and it's always good to have a little cushion for that. And then recognizing that you may have to trim some costs or delay some things you spend your money on doesn't mean that you can't necessarily never have them. Just means you kind of have to wait until you can really make those a reality for yourself. All right. So as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, we talked a little bit about. I said doesn't mean you can't necessarily have it. Means you just have to kind of wait or saving for an emergency fund. So think about it this way: if you save $20 a week, that's over $1,000 a year, right? Maybe you can do more than 20. Maybe you can only do $5 a week. That's okay. Start somewhere. But I've broken it down here. $20 a week is $80 a month, and that adds up very quickly. So I want you to realistically ask yourself, how much can you save? Take a look at your budget on that budgeting sheet, kind of see where you can make some moves, make some changes, and that can be huge to really kind of help you get that savings cushion there. All right, so looking ahead. So I mentioned earlier that I would show you all a resource with some budgeting sheets and that sort of thing. And one of the great resources that we have on through financial education is iGrad. And there are so many great resources on this website. There are budgeting worksheets, which I'll show you in a second. There are credit score calculators, financial literacy, kind of like where to begin with that. What is financial literacy? I hope obviously this webinar has helped you with that. How to track your student loans and payments and that sort of thing. And I think that is absolutely huge and a great resource. So as I mentioned, the budgeting worksheet. So this is an electronic version on iGrads. You can kind of see, we've put in some pretend numbers here, but it tracks your income, the expenses you have, and then it kind of gives you an analysis to look at your budget and then some resources as well. So definitely check that out as well. Again, totally up to you. You can use this or you can use something else. You just want to take advantage of resources that you know are going to be beneficial for you. The next one, as I mentioned earlier, the last one is managing seasonal expenses. Again, this can change depending on where you are in life. Maybe you're at the stage where a lot of your friends are getting married. Maybe you're at the stage where you're just excited to be in your 20s. Who knows? Those can all change, but those are things that you want to kind of think about as you plan your expenses for the year, whether it's around birthdays, celebrations, holidays, and do you have a budget line for that, even if it's not a monthly expense, but do you have money saved away for that for when the time comes? All right, so as we kind of close out here, I want you to really think about your why. Managing money isn't just about the dollar sign in your bank account. It's not, just cash. It's about setting goals and evaluating your choices and really committing to being fiscally aware and taking control of your finances because they can get out of hand very quickly. So just like anything in life, it's based on your personality. It's based on your goals, your needs, your wants. All of those are things to consider as you kind of think about your financial plan. But step back and kind of think about the why behind your financial decisions and why you're making certain choices, and look at the resources available to you as you kind of go through your financial journey. So with that being said, thank you all so much for joining us today. It has been a blast virtually seeing you. On this slide here, I have linked all of our social media. You can kind of follow along with us. I've also linked our email address there if you want to have a one-on-one meeting with myself or another financial education specialist to talk more about this in depth or talk about it specific to your needs, as well as our website down there at the bottom, nyu.edu/financial-ed. That is where you can access iGrad. But thank you all so much for coming today. It has been a blast being with you all, and cheers to making good money moves.